Stephen Miron in 2 words.
Family man.
Competitive and connected.
Creator.
Exuberant.
Dealmaker.
And warm.
Energetic.
Passionate.
And very driven.
The second word I put is purposeful. He really genuinely lives to make a difference and to make a positive impact. I think he's very aware that he wants to make a bigger impact than just the day job.
Welcome to the Media Leader Podcast. I'm Jack Benjamin. January is always such a slog, and February always flies by in comparison. We're already just a week away from March, and for one UK media leader, that means just a handful of days away from stepping back after 16 highly successful years at the helm of Global. When Stephen Miron joined Global as its CEO in 2008, it was a £250 million business with only one national radio brand. By the time he will leave the position next month, he'll have helped turn it into nearly a £1 billion business with numerous national radio brands, a digital ad exchange, dedicated listening app, and substantial out-of-home footprint. Miron will still be involved at Global in the position of chairman, where he replaces former ITV and Granada CEO Lord Charles Allen, who himself will become a senior non-executive director. Former STV CEO Simon Pitts is succeeding Miron as Global CEO. In an interview with the media leader in October, Global's chief commercial officer Mike Gordon said, quote, "We're very lucky because Stephen's not leaving the business. We have Stephen and we have Simon. It's great to have somebody join the business with the experience that Simon's got. No one has a monopoly on a great idea." In the intro, you just heard from other top industry leaders, including ITV CEO Dame Carolyn McCall, BBC Director General Tim Davie, Mail Metro Media Chief Commercial Officer Dom Williams, and Boots CMO Pete Markey, as they all sang praise for Miron as an industry leader and family man. Miron sat down last autumn with our former editor-in-chief, now columnist, Omar Oakes, for a conversation at our Future of Media London event to reflect on his career and legacy. We thought it was fitting to resurface the interview this week as Miron soon paves the way for new leadership at Global. This is their conversation, lightly edited for clarity. We hope you enjoy.
It's not often we get to do an interview like this. I mean, this is the future of media. When you think back to when you took over Global in 2008, would you have ever foreseen the future looks like how Global looks today in terms of you're an outdoor business, an addressable audio company, having acquired all these radio brands over the years? It's transformed the business so much. The media leader, we champion certain values in terms of disruption, inclusion, courage, and excellence. And I think looking back at what has happened at Global, I think a lot has really been encompassed by that. You joined in Global in 2008. Your boss is, of course, Ashley Tabor-King, the founder of Global. You create this business together. Together with Lord Allen, you joined in 2007. You made huge changes to the market. When I think it's fair to say before the radio business was a bit of decline. And
wasn't in a healthy state.
Yeah, we'll talk about how you sought to turn that around. And Global is now the biggest radio company in the UK. You know these household name brands, Capital, Heart, LBC. James O'Brien on stage here yesterday. Very entertaining, very informative. And now you have Global Player, one of the fastest growing entertainment apps in the UK. He's not leaving the business. He's going to take up the post as chairman. And I know you don't want to talk about your successor, Simon Pitts, who's joining from STV. But it's going to be hell of a job, isn't it? Following 16 years, you're a very kind of particular business in terms of you must have developed this relationship with Ashley Tabor-King. I mean, how's he going to follow that?
He'll be brilliant. I mean, firstly, thank you, Bao, for sponsoring this session. I'm so touched that it's wonderful. Listen, trying to wrap up 16 years of what we've done at Global and what the team have achieved at Global. Your sort of first question: did we have any idea what we were walking into and what the opportunity was? Probably not. I think that when I reflect on that beginning period, the bravest man in the room was actually Ash, because he was the person who wrote a check at the time in 2008 for 575 million to put this thing together. And bearing in mind the radio industry had been in decline for 10 years prior to that. And the company I'd come from, DMGT, had just sold its stake in GCAP, which was the public company that contained Capital and Classic. And that was done with my recommendation because I went, radio is dead. So it tells you how little I know. or more importantly, how lucky I am, because I loved newspapers in 2008, thought that was where my future was going to be, and who knew how the different media channels would actually play out. One thing was for sure, I think the vision we always had, and actually a lot of that came from, I think if you look at any media company there is, the ones that do well and the ones that don't, you start with great products. And we had a vision for a product strategy which involved consolidation. And the first step of that was buying those stations. And then the second part of that was then rebranding those stations, creating the Heart network first, and then Capital. But if you look at what Capital was, it was a London-only station. You look at what Heart was, it was basically 3 stations in the UK. It was a huge job, and at the time when we did it, people really were very critical. So the sort of radio anoraks, the radio geeks were going, this is terrible, you're going to kill radio. Well, if you looked at the numbers and you looked at what was happening to the audiences, radio was accelerating to its demise. So we really didn't have many options. And it required amazing bravery, incredible teamwork, and a bit of luck, which is what I mean, when you think back in 2008, we were 2 years ahead of the iPad being launched, before Instagram's being launched. Some of you probably weren't even born in 2008. And so we exactly. And so we hit the ramp at the right point, just before the sort of digital evolution really kicked in. And we took decisions that were, I think when we look at all the big milestones that we went through, we were a bit crazy, but very brave and very focused on what we were going to do.
Yeah, we're like crazy. We use the word courage, but we're like crazy.
We were crazy as well.
Yeah. So this is kicking off the first of a double header of interviews that I'm really keen to do this morning, where we look specifically at leadership in media. Stephen being a very well-known media owner, CEO, and our next guest, Susan Kingston Brown, who runs the media agency UM in EMEA. And I want to talk about leadership. We'll get into obviously what you've done at Global, a bit about what you did before at the Mail. But I want to get a sense of kind of researching this. Lots of people have very nice things to say to you, as the video.
They're paid very well.
Lots of people over the years, kind of there are Stephen Miron isms, if I can put it that way. So is it true? Maybe you can bust some myths. Is it true you have a car for every day of the week?
Yeah. It's a fair cop. I like cars. Yeah.
What is it? Is it true that you were sacked from your first job in retail?
At Safeways, yes, for being very badly behaved. Yeah, and that's how I stumbled into the media industry at 19. So I wasn't bright enough to go to university. My father worked in commercial television. He was right at the beginning of the first ever commercial TV world, and he actively discouraged me for going into media. So sort of behind his back, I managed to blag my way in, and that is exactly what happened. Blag my way into TV Times. So that was, 19, and then you just made it up. And then I was very lucky at 22 to get hired by the Mail. And that was quite good fun. We did 10 years there, and then after 10 years at the Mail, I left to go to the Independent, which was the transformational move for me, because it was a huge step up in what I was doing at the time. And I loved the Mail, so it was a big wrench to leave it first time. I then went to the Indie, learned everything, because it was brutally tough. It was at the bottom of the food chain in print at the time. And having come from the Mail, where it was, you got more incoming than having to chase it. And we had to do really smart things. So when I came back to the Mail 3 years later, that sort of, I think, set me up quite well.
It's interesting because, stop me, anyone in the audience, if this isn't true of you, if you really grew up if you were a little child wanting to get into advertising and media. But generally, your story is not too dissimilar from most people who come into this industry, where you ask them, how did you come to work in media and advertising? And they say, I just kind of fell into it, or I knew someone and the opportunity was there. Why do you think this industry attracts that? Do you think that, what do you think it says about kind of your own personal story? Do you think it attracts entrepreneurial people? Is there something about creativity? What is it?
Well, before I went to TV Times, I had the chance to go to work at Saatchi's, and it was purely a decision based on Saatchi's was paying $5,000 a year. Yes, people did pay £5,000 a year back then. And TV Times was offering £5,500 a year. So it was a really simple decision. That extra 500 quid was the big difference. But interestingly then, I think the truth was, at that point, everyone in agencies were the brightest, sharpest people. And the people in media sales then were the people who probably weren't quite as sophisticated in their mindset as the agency people. Life's changed a bit. I think if you look at now the quality on the media owner side and the number of people from agencies who have then transferred to media owners, it tells you a lot about how the agency world has evolved and changed with the consolidation, how that side of the business has different pressures to the media owner side of the business, and how I think as media owner companies have evolved, becoming far broader than sort of one-dimensional vehicles, so the digital evolution for most media companies, I think has made the jobs more interesting. So I think it's a great, I've met some of the most wonderful people, some of the people who were kind enough to say lovely things earlier on, who've been great mates through the whole time. I mean, Carolyn and I both used to rep Saatchi's. She was at The Guardian next door, and she was literally the best of the best. I mean, we were all in awe of Carolyn, because she just made it look so easy, and literally took money for The Guardian that none of us could work out how she got some of the stuff she got. I mean, we were all going, it's got a tiny audience compared to where we were. But she was brilliant. And those people have become and remain great mates throughout. So I think the industry attracts, and I hope it continues to attract, those kind of personality. This business is so much about personality. I think it's a great business. It's a great industry. We're not saving lives. We make a difference to people's lives through all the great CSR stuff that many people do. But you've got to enter this business and have some fun.
Is that still true today? Because we'll get into your time at the Mail, and this is the time when the internet was taking off, and they didn't have a website when you were there. Yeah. And we'll talk about how the Mail Online, the genesis, or maybe not of that. But it seems like the industry is so much more technical nowadays. So much of the content that we had here, we're talking about data-driven marketing and all the tools and platforms and technical skills that you need. So don't you need to be more technically proficient? Is it becoming...
I've always put a lot of against relationships and meeting people and networking. I think that's, if I was to sort of look back and continue to do today, everything is about relationships. So you can have all the technical knowledge and know-how, but unless you can influence with it, it's sort of meaningless power. So I think making sure that people, this industry needs people who build relationships. And why do clients go to agencies? Why do they engage with those people? It's ultimately a people industry. You need people to articulate it. AI is not going to replace those interventions. So I think that's always the balance. I would say relationships, networking, passion, massively important. Sure, now if I look at what a global salesperson needs to know about today against when Mike and I walked through the doors on December the 1st, 2008, it's fundamentally different. But I think that makes the job more exciting. It means we can attract different people. But it doesn't detract from the fact that to actually make a difference, you still have to have a great relationship and build great relationships with people, whether that's in agency, whether it's with clients, whoever. And that's what I think will continue.
Okay, so let's talk about your time at Associated Newspapers. You pitched, didn't you, to kind of have a website?
Yeah.
Maybe not. The name was going to be Mail Online, but you had trouble doing that. Why was that?
Well, I got thrown out for when I pitched the first idea for Mail Online because we were the last newspaper at the Mail to have a website. And there was, the fun thing, for those people here who have either work in newspapers or have worked in newspapers, without any shadow of doubt, it is the toughest environment of any media owner. Thanks, Omar. And it encourages resilience and survival. So I think that in the newspaper world, they're the most politically, internally charged environments. And therefore, you're always trying to navigate through those challenges rather than what they should have been doing, which is always my reflection on the difference between newspapers and what we've done at Global, is there was so much emphasis on internal politics and always worrying about who was going to like or dislike, something. And with
Someone, do you mean Lord Dacre?
Lord Dacre, he's not a lord yet. I think he'd like to be a lord. Paul Dacre. Yeah, I mean, absolutely, because the mindset was always about selling as many newspapers. And if you provided a free online product, well, no shit, Sherlock. That may diminish the circulation. And everyone was wrestling at that point with what role did online versions of newspapers have. There was no charge, no subscription model at that point. So it was just it was perceived as a risk. So when I first presented Mail Online and was told where to go with it, thankfully, Lord Rothermere came back and went, actually, we need to do this and we should do this. So, but it's hard, and it shouldn't have been hard. And I think a lot of the issues that happened in the newspaper side of my life were harder than they should have been, only because we just used to have to wrestle so much inside, and rather than kept focusing on what's the best product we can create for the customers, which is what when we went to global, that was the big learning, was just focus on what difference you can make outside rather than worry about navigating inside. And
I mean, knowing what you know about the newspaper industry, is that just true of Associated Newspapers?
No, of course not. News Corp would have been, News Corp is a brutally tough environment. I don't know where Dominic's here or anything, but they have a unique ingredient, and
do you think that holds them back as businesses?
Yeah, I do, absolutely. I mean, and there were a number of decisions that Lord Rothermere had amazing instinct to do at the time, but was almost persuaded not to do, that cost the company a lot of money. And I don't think the company's shape and size today, you know, when I think back to the size of DMGT when I was there, to the size of Global, you know, we're a bigger company. Well, we were a minnow then. I mean, our business was a 200 million business in 2008, and we're now just under $1 billion revenue. So it shows you what you can achieve if you really focus on the right things. And secondly, what happens is when you get, and if you get in a pickle and you get yourself tied up with wrong people, wrong decisions, don't build the right teams, influenced by the wrong people, you go the other way, and that will continue.
Explain how you ended up working for Ashley, creating this business now, Global, and what was it, after having gone through that experience at Associated Newspapers, how were you feeling about your career at that point?
I was having a great time. I mean, we were putting out...
So you're someone who actually kind of like... You quite like the fight. You quite like that fight.
Yeah, I think that probably would be something that people may say about me. I'm not afraid of confrontation. I never have been. I don't go into it with it's just how you handle it. With very aggressive people, there are ways of handling things, and not getting emotional when you're against quite aggressive people, I think, is an important part. But at the when I was at the Mail, we were having an amazing time. We were putting out more CDs than Universal Music. We were probably the biggest music distributor on the planet. I had the most fun when I got to persuade Prince to allow me to launch his new album with the Mail on Sunday. It was the biggest sale the newspaper has ever had. So we were flying. We were having great fun. I think most of our CDs were then subsequently used as coasters for coffee tables, but I was enjoying it. And Ash and I have met through a mutual friend. When he acquired Chrysalis in 2007, he'd phoned me up only for a chat and advice. And I was going, mate, you don't want to invest in radio. And actually,
So why did he want to do it? What was his motivation?
He had a passion for the medium, and he had this view, and as it's played out, an unbelievably insightful view on what the potential was. And it was about consolidation. So if you look at all the things that happen, I mean, and our learnings, things that work, things that don't work, you've got to have scale. Certainly in this world, if you're a media owner, it's very hard if you're at the bottom end of the food chain. So having scale was critically important, and a belief of what you could do with the product, which he had. So he and I met. I spent a lot of time with him, more giving him counsel, telling him some great people to hire, not being me, because I sort of didn't think it was the right job at the time. And then, there was this sort of moment of, I sort of knew my future destiny was where it was going to play out in newspapers. I think I was, whatever I was, 42, 43. And this was the big risk. But at the same time, the challenge was taking on something that was going to be new. And all my friends who I spoke to in the industry, I said, what do you think about this? What do you know? My God, you'd be mad. And there you go. Then the next thing, I go and work with Ash. And he's very persuasive, incredible vision, unbelievably committed. I mean, we are so fortunate. You know, when you work with founders of businesses and owners of businesses, I mean, there is no one who works harder in our company than Ash. And I think that's when you talk about what the culture is and how we've managed to navigate our way through all the various scenarios over the years. Everything comes from the top.
What advice would you have for people who are working in that sort of founder-led business? You've obviously developed a relationship with him over many years now. I said at the start, it's going to be tough for anyone to replace you because of that relationship that you built with the founder. What advice would you have for people to?
In founder-led businesses, I mean, I think there's two things. Founder-led businesses are fine when you're private. Founder-led businesses that go from private to then public tend to struggle because the founder doesn't have control in the way that they thought they had. The great thing about Global, we're a fully private company, and I think the ability to move at speed. The people, when they come to Global, the observation most have, however much we tell people, it's going to be quite quick. We make fast decisions. We'll talk about the speed to which we acquired the outdoor companies, but we do things because we can navigate through. I mean, and just to put that in context, when we bought, the transformational piece for Global really was post it coming together in 2008, we bought the Guardian's radio business in 2012. And that decision, Bauer were looking to buy it at the same time. They were on the top floor in the lawyers at Allen Overy. We were in the basement. They didn't know we'd smuggled into the basement, and we managed to, do it quite fast. They were still dotting I's, crossing T's, asking lots of questions. We just went, we're in. That move, if Bauer had bought Guardian's business at that point, it would have made them the same size as Global in share of commercial hours. It would have taken them to 37%. That move that it gave us 48% of all commercial radio hours. It was transformational. But it was the speed of decision making. And then fast forward to when we looked at the outdoor sector and went, we've done everything we sort of can in UK radio at that point. What do we like? What do we look at? We looked at television, didn't look at newspapers. We looked at all sorts of other assets. It became obvious that outdoor was ready for consolidation. We bought the biggest business, Exterior, and I met the team. We went in and we met the management team, I think on a Wednesday afternoon at 2:00 at Goldman Sachs. We completed a deal, £475 million later, on Friday afternoon.
Wow.
Now, there are not many companies that could do that at that speed. And bear in mind, Ocean had already thought they'd bought the business. They'd been in there for weeks. So, we were able to do it because we're a private company, because there's an implicit trust from the founder and the owners of the business to just go, right, is this the right strategic thing? Yes, let's do it.
So the GMG Radio Brands acquisition makes sense. You're looking to increase share, you can cut costs through synergy, etc. That seems quite standard. Explain the thinking with buying these outdoor businesses. Whose idea was it? What's the strategy?
We have an amazing board. We'd gone off for a sort of board session, and when we were looking at what next for Global, and if you look at all of our evolution, I mean, without fail, every year we're doing things. If you looked at our timeline of how we look at our business, we are doing things all the time, whether it's investment in businesses, whether it's looking to the future, whatever it may be. We're constantly curious about what we could be doing, what we should be doing, and we discuss lots of things together. And it was a collective group of, we'd entered the festival business. That hadn't gone so well because we were not relevant enough. We knew all the artists, but it wasn't good. We just realised we didn't have the scale against a Live Nation or an AEG. So we exited that one after a period of time. We tried it, experiment failed, moved on. We set up an entertainment business in LA, had the best office in LA. It was magnificent. But yeah, there's another challenge with working with American people and how they work and it not quite telling you what they really want to tell you and all that stuff. So we learned quite a lot from that. But again, we came out of that quickly. With outdoor, we'd always used it as a media channel. It's an incredible media channel. It was probably quite, I think, where we saw the opportunity, it hadn't had investment, certainly not had tech investment. Outside of JC&Co, who are a brilliant company at what they do, the rest of them owned by private equity, not really being able to invest at the level they needed to. And we saw a consolidation play. And the fact that we went from zero to on par with JC&Co with market share from the 3 acquisitions that we did in very short succession was the play. If we could only have got one bit of it, it wouldn't have worked. So we loved it as a media channel. We used it a lot. There was obviously the digitization coming down the line. And some of the parts we thought would work really well with our portfolio as well. And also, no one in the world, everywhere we looked at, ever combined radio and outdoor. And those that had tried, which was Clear Channel in the States and under iHeart, had failed and divested it. We kept coming back to it's got to be a way of connecting. I hear it and I see it. And that's how we sort of ended up with it.
So what is that magic ingredient? How are you connecting it?
We have a team where we have solutions, creative solutions. There are brilliant ways. We use the data that we learn. So, global player, we've now got 10 million registered users. We put all the parts together, and there are far brighter people than me in the company who just come up with brilliant ways of leveraging that. And whether that's using data, whether it's using insight. We've just been through the pitch for the TfL renewal, which we were delighted to retain that. And I think some of the thinking that we're applying to that will be world-class. So, we see great opportunities where there are brands that want to come in one door that we can move to another door, and that if our thinking is at the right level that I believe it is, then we'll do very well for all the partners that we work with.
Yeah, and of course, digital audio has come on leaps and bounds. 10 years, I can't believe it, 10 years since you launched DAX, the Digital Audio Exchange. Yeah. How did that come about?
Well, I'll spare Mike Gordon's blushes, but Mike was the sort of creator of that. We were away as a board, and Mike and I had often spoken about that when our time in newspapers, by the time newspapers had woken up to the fact that online was getting going, all the classified money was left in newspapers. And again, when it is written about the demise of print newspapers, clearly the ones that survive and will flourish are the ones with scale, like Mail Online, like News Corp. But we saw that there was literally going to be so many issues with that we would disrupt ourselves. So our fear was our airtime business was like a display business in newspapers. And could that be at risk at any point? And when I was at the Mail, I went over to Sweden. I saw this thing called Metro with Lord Rothermere, and we looked at it and went, that'd be good in the UK. And that was how we came to launch it. And that was disrupting newspapers. Here's a free newspaper, give it away on the tube, off you go. That had its own challenges internally as well, as you can imagine. So with Global, we looked at it and went, right, what happens if we lost 20% of our airtime revenue? What would we do? And Mike and the team came up with this genius thought of, well, if we carved out those people that listen to radio on IP-connected devices, we could do something smart with it. And then we invested in a company called AdsWiz in California, and then it evolved, and then it evolved, and then it evolved. And the great thing about DAX is not only was it the first programmatic audio platform anywhere, we expected it to cannibalize some of our revenues. It never has. It's only been incremental. And that has been something that, again, you learn a lot. You disrupt yourself before someone disrupts you. I think every business needs to think about that. I think the businesses that sit on their hands and just sit there, it's going well, it's going great, and then suddenly, before they know, they've been flat. And if you, even the biggest and fastest growing digital companies have started to see, suddenly the growth that they experienced have plateaued out. And that's because new entrants came along, whether it's Snapchat, whether it's TikTok. So you can never take it for granted. You can never be complacent. And I think what Mike and the team created in DAX was truly world class. And in the next 10 to 15 years will be such a critical part of the global story.
Yeah, it's great. I don't know if the audience feels as well. It's quite it's interesting sitting here listening to you talk like this, because you seem to still talk with so much energy about the business, and it seems like you could go on for longer.
I'm not about to die, thankfully.
Yeah.
But
So I get the sense that you're still going to be quite playing an active role as a.
No, Simon. I think that, listen, the key thing is, one, you have to know when to exit stage left, and there is nothing else. I mean, it's been the most amazing journey for 16 years. It's been a privilege to be sitting where I've sat. But I also think the business needs different thinking for the next 15 years.
Yeah.
And
how would you say the company's culture is now? 16 years.
16 years. I think we had a culture at the beginning of Global. We created this thing called Global Obsession. And then it suddenly became unfashionable where you couldn't use the word obsession. Anyway, but it was the best thing we did, because we wrote an obsession statement and we said, that's who we are. And then we now have this cultural piece about making everyone's day brighter, which is great as well for us. I think we have a unique culture at Global. It works for some people and it doesn't work for other people, and that's fine. And some people. So
what sort of person do you have to be at Global?
Oh, we have a completely eclectic mix of people at Global. We have an amazing selection of people. Some have been here right from the start. John McGough or Mike and others. And then we've got an amazing group of future talent and stars coming through in the organisation. So I think it's as much about so many good people, and it's not only about being good. It's, for us, we look for being great, and looking at that little magic ingredient in someone, seeing something in someone, we go, oh my God, they've got it. And it could be from anywhere. It's sort of why we set up the Global Academy. I mean, again, when I look back on the mad ideas that we sat around and went, whoa, well, let's open a school. Now, bearing in mind, you could spell my A-level results did spell faux and off. Neither Ash or I went to university. Well, let's create a school. Of course we would. And let's write the syllabus. That's a great thing. But again, what Ash had the bravery to sort of go, well, you know what, it's going to be a really important part of when we look at our industry in the future, in 20 years' time, 30 years' time. We want people who started at the Global Academy. And what we do at the Global Academy, we take on a number of the apprentices. I mean, this is in Hayes. It's 14 to 18-year-olds. And we teach them about broadcasting, media, technology. And we try and take on at least, 14 apprentices a year. But we invite Google, Facebook, Sky, all the top media companies to see our grads. And when you hear the stories of some of these kids, what they have to do to get to Global Academy, the difficulties they face, the harshness they face, it's so amazing to see what they come through and the love that they get for the industry. So when you talk about the next generation, we thought we'll take that into our own hands. We'll make sure that kids who would never, ever get an opportunity or know about this thing called media would find a place that they could go to. And, and if we're able to provide them with a job at the end of it, amazing, which we do.
Yeah. How do you see the workplace evolving? Because everyone struggles with talent and post-COVID hybrid working, and I don't think anyone has a silver bullet solution. If you do, please tell us. We'd love to learn.
Yeah, get people back to work. I mean, it's such a load of bollocks of, when I do mentoring for people, I'm like, look, yeah, if you want an easy life, it's lovely being at home. 1, 2, 3, 4. My daughters are sort of just starting their working lives, and they're actively not going for companies where they say, oh, you can work from home, P&G, oh, you can work from home 4 days a week. Really? Where'd you go with that? I mean, it's horrible.
So what policy do you have at Global?
We have a minimum of 3 days a week, but we want to make it a place where people believe that by being in, they get better benefit than being out.
And Amazon's just gone to 5 days a week?
Amazon's just gone to 5 days a week. I mean, the honest answer is, I think if we have to force someone to do that, It's not. You want people to come to work for the right reasons, because they enjoy it, they love working with their colleagues, they get inspired by people, and they learn. And it's a great environment. I think when you have to sort of go, right, clock in, clock out. But at the same time, I think we have a responsibility to the people working at the company to say, look, you will do your best work if you're here. You cannot do it from a Zoom call. You just can't. And anybody who believes that is kidding themselves. And if you want to have ambition in this life, and you want to really learn, when I first started, I literally used to walk around asking people what they did, how they did, what happened, even on areas that had nothing to do with it. I used to go, whether it was printers at the Mail or whether it was, production at the TV Times, my first job. I learned everything there was. I went and asked questions, and I saw that loads of other people just couldn't be bothered. And the people who stand out, and the people who will thrive, and the people who will get to number one seats in organizations will be the people who learn their way, who are more ambitious, not having to necessarily be sharp-elbowed ambitious, but just want to learn, and they will do well. So I think the next stage, I think more and more organizations will recognize, certainly the ones that were very lax on encouraging people to come back, I think will push much harder for it.
Yeah.
I think we got the balance right now.
Yeah. We've seen in the last few years, so much some older talent leave the industry because dissatisfaction with work-life balance. A lot of these people have childcare responsibilities. Yeah. Do you think it affects, coming to the office potentially 5 days a week affects those people more than younger people who you might be mentoring?
Yeah, but I think, again, I look at the Global Academy, there's one kid who I met on day 2 when we opened the Academy, and he was carrying a video camera, and I said, oh, how did you get here? I said, well, tell me your story. He said, oh, well, my family were in Kent. Oh, wow, that's a long way to come. Yeah. I said, well, where are you living now? He said, we're not living anywhere. We sofa surf every night with my mother, just to come to the Academy. And so for me, you think if you'll make it work. That kid who's now gone on to do amazing things. He's now working at BA doing video production. Sometimes, you've got to put a bit into it. You can't all be, oh my God, woe is me. So I think the resilience part for the next generation is going to be the toughest bit. Yes, the COVID years were shit awful for people, but you can't keep referencing back to that going, oh, well, it is tough. Some people have it bloody tough. There are single parents. There'll be single parents here. Lots of people face adversity, and you've got decisions to make with adversity. Life is sometimes not easy, and you have to navigate through that. And I think that whether it's the way we all raise our children, in my case, or the way we talk to our colleagues at work, sometimes tough love is, it's not a bad thing. And I think we also have a duty to make sure people are set up for the next stage.
Do you think the pendulum swung too far as everyone's trying to be more mindful?
I think in certain places, yes. I think we started worrying so much about what that generation were feeling. And we literally shifted from, one situation to another situation. So I think, you just need sense to prevail. And when it doesn't pass your own smell test, you go, we've got that wrong. And I also think that if you don't do it right and you're not don't set these up for things for the future in the right way, I think it will cost you, and it won't necessarily help the individuals either. Yeah.
Okay, so let's wrap up. So we've kind of done a whistle-stop tour of your career. It's not quite "This Is Your Life" with the rest of everything. The 16-year-olds in the audience won't remember that. To sum up your leadership philosophy, if you have one, or maybe you don't have one.
I think I try and I think there's one slide I've always used whenever I've gone out and given any speeches, and that's about stop being afraid of what can go wrong and focus on what can go right. I think that's for me that's always served me really well. Is just make sure don't be worried about things, whether it's meeting grown-ups, going in for a meeting with someone you don't know and thinking, oh, how am I going to do this? Just know your stuff and be confident about it.
And we may have mentioned it already. What do you think is the biggest challenge that media leaders face going forward?
Media leaders facing going forward? It's always about talent. I mean, if you're a CEO of a company, nicely, you're only as good as the people who work in that organisation. So making sure you find and develop the best talent is what it's all about.
What are you proudest of?
Outside of the family, I would say, creating Make Some Noise, the team that we've got at Global. I think others will write what their view is about my period at Global, but I think it's been an absolute blast.
And what's the biggest lesson you've learned over the years?
Back yourself.
Back yourself. Stephen Miron, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to the Media Leader Podcast. Our executive producer is me, Jack Benjamin. Special thanks to our production partner, Trisonic. You can find all our episodes wherever you get your podcasts or on our website at themedialeader.co.uk. But do please remember to subscribe to be notified when we release our next episode. You can also subscribe to our newsletter at The Media Leader to receive daily coverage of all the biggest stories in media and advertising. From all of us at The Media Leader, I'm Jack Benjamin. See you next time.